Get ready to embrace debate. First Take starts now.
Coming up on the First Take podcast, can LeBron James and the Cavs end the Bulls' playoff run tonight? Plus, how can Tom Brady repair his image? And we'll tell you the best remaining teams in the NBA playoffs. The First Take podcast starts right now. Good morning, everyone. One day closer to Friday, the weekend. It's Thursday. Carrie champion Skip Bayless, Bristol, Connecticut, where it's fairly cool. It feels good outside. Stephen A. Smith, he's in Chicago. Surprise, surprise. How are you? How's the Windy City?
Good morning. How y'all doing? How's everything?
We're good. How are you in Chicago?
It's a disastrous. I was running out to catch a flight yesterday. I forgot my makeup. I forgot my clothes. I forgot everything. I forgot everything trying to catch my flight. So, needless to say, I'm a bit shabby this morning. Y'all are going to have to forgive me.
I would have never noticed.
I would have never noticed. You look fine to us.
You just look sensational.
No, Carrie. Skip means it differently. He's saying he wouldn't have noticed because I look no differly. As
he got
to
this.
imply
Oh,
I
I was being nice.
That's what he's trying to do.
I was actually being nice, too.
Okay, all right. Well, we're glad to have you no matter what, minus makeup and everything else. Coming up on the show today, we react to the playoff games and look ahead to tonight's game as well. But first, Tom Brady is getting advice from a guy who knows all about battling the NFL. Jonathan Velma told our Ed Warder through a text message what he believes Brady should do. Take a look. I tell Brady to fight the emotion of defending himself publicly, lawyer up, and begin to devise a game plan to beat the NFL through the court system. However, he adds that Brady will face a different challenge because Goodell led the investigation on Bountygate, unlike Deflategate led by Ted Wells. Vilma went on to say, we based our argument off of Goodell being the face of the Bountygate witch hunt. He hasn't done that this time around. I don't know how he accuses Goodell of being too biased to the arbiter. I was able to prove he was biased and then let all the facts start coming out in a neutral setting. All right, so that's advice. We had Velma on the show, actually, and he talked about it. So, Skip, do you agree with what he is actually telling Tom Brady to do?
Stephen A. Smith, as you recall, I was with Jonathan Vilma throughout the entire Bountygate controversy, and I am with him now. We've had Jonathan sit right here on this show. I've gotten to know him a little bit. This is a tough-minded, strong-minded, high-principled man who went to battle against Roger Goodell, as you recall, and Kerry just alluded to. He sued Roger Goodell. He won the right to a truly independent arbitrator, not some Harold Henderson from the league office. He got the ex-commissioner Paul Tagliabue to review the case of Bountygate, and Paul Tagliabue made Roger Goodell look foolish because he rescinded all of these suspensions, including Jonathan Vilma's. So Vilma sued, got an injunction, and got to play, and then won the battle against Roger Goodell. And he's exactly right now, Stephen A. Let your lawyers speak loudly for you, and if it comes to it, in court. As you know, I'm a Tom Brady fan, and I feel like right here, right now, Stephen A., I owe Mr. Brady an apology. I was with you from day one, the day after the Wells investigation was released, the report. I was with you in spirit because I wanted my guy Tom Brady to please stand up and speak out, and he wouldn't do it. We saw him at Salem State University. He was still mealy-mouthed. He was still, golly gee, we'll see. He was still shrugging it off. And you said, and I agreed with you, it's time to defend yourself, just as you, Stephen A. Smith, would have stood up and spoken loudly to defend yourself if you felt you had been wrongly accused. I would have stood up and defended myself in the same circumstance. But listen, I think Tom Brady might just have the last laugh here. He's doing it the right way. He's doing it the legal way. And I think his actions through court, through his legal team, will speak much louder than he could in public. Again, I wish just for the spirit of it. We're going to deal with this question later. Has his image been permanently tainted? We talked about it a little bit yesterday. Now we have a new ABC poll that indicates it probably has been. I'm with you on that, Stephen A. But again, who's going to have the last laugh here? Who's going to be vindicated in the end? I think Tom Brady is now going about it the right way, the way he does on the football field, which is to let your game speak for you, or in this case, let the facts that you know that you're going to exhibit in court speak loudest for you. So I am so with Jonathan Vilma. I'm glad he said what he said, and I apologize to Tom Brady. Again, I don't know whether he's innocent or not,
Right.
but I want him to have his day in court, and apparently he is going to get it.
Time out. So you're saying Jonathan Vilma, what he said actually changed your perspective on how Brady should?
Just the whole last 3 days, and again, I don't want to beat this to death, but I've talked to several confidants close to Brady, and they say he is insisting he is 100% innocent and wrongly convicted here,
Okay.
and that has changed my perception just to fall back and say, I'm still open-minded.
Okay.
Now, again, maybe I'm not objective because you well know for years and years on this show I've been a Brady fan and Brady supporter, New England supporter, but I'm now open-minded to hearing what Tom Brady and company and legal team have to say in court. I'm not going to leap to the conclusion that he's a cheater just yet. Maybe in the end I will.
Okay.
But right now he deserves his day in court, and Jonathan Vilma is correct. He's going to get it.
All right, Stephen A. So Skip is saying that he's holding off on judgment. He likes what Jonathan Vilma had to say, and it changed his perspective as to how Tom Brady should go about it. Your take? Do you agree with Vilma?
No, I don't. I don't agree with Skip Bayless either. And let me say this. I mean, I don't understand why you're apologizing. What are you apologizing for? Just for keeping an open mind? I mean, I don't think the apology is necessary. Let's see how everything transpires and what the ultimate conclusion is before we dole out apologies. When I apologized to the New Orleans Saints and Jonathan Vilma and Drew Brees and everybody else, it was in the aftermath of Vilma going through the court system. It was in the aftermath of a verdict. It was in the aftermath of Paul Tagliabue making the decision that he made that made Roger Goodell look foolish. It was in the aftermath of all of that. Prior to that, you know, silly me, I was of the conclusion that the NFL, being a multi-billion-dollar establishment, would make sure that their investigators are top-notch and that they had dotted all their I's and crossed all their respective T's. And particularly as it pertained to Bountygate, that did not appear to be the case. But I think it's important in this particular sequence, Skip Bayless, to highlight the discrepancies, or rather the differences, between Bountygate and Deflategate. Bountygate, you essentially had a situation where Roger Goodell and the NFL surmised that Greg Williams, the former defensive coordinator, obviously was essentially putting bounties and hits out on opposing players. Greg Williams definitely acquiesced to that, you know, those accusations. He confirmed it because he certainly didn't deny it. He certainly dimed other people out. Ultimately, it cost Sean Payton a year of his career as a head football coach simply because, you know, of his dereliction of duty as a head coach, because obviously Greg Williams worked under him. Mickey Loomis, the general manager, it cost him 8 games because, you know, he's a leader within the organization, and it was his job as well to pretty much streamline this kind of stuff and reel these boys in. Jonathan Vilma fought because Jonathan Vilma was saying, I'm a football player. I went out there to play football. I did not go out there to intentionally hurt anybody. I did not have any bounties on individuals. How dare you accuse me of such an egregious and an unethical thing? And obviously he was in a position to do that. In this particular instance, Skip Bayless, the footballs were deflated. There is no denying that. And because there's no denying that the footballs are deflated, now it becomes an issue as to whether or not Tom Brady knew about this and condoned this. That really is the issue in question. Now, he can sit there and deny it until the cows come home. But in the end, there is no denying that the quarterback had to know the footballs were deflated. Now, if you want to sit there and debate whether he literally told somebody something or whatever the case may be, okay, fight all day to preserve your reputation, because he certainly had an impeccable one. But there is no denying that 11 of the 12 footballs were below the legal limit. And that's the issue here. Jonathan Vilma was denying that he was a part of a bounty. He was denying that he was a part of something so egregious and so unethical as it pertains to him and who he is and what he stands for. That is a character issue. And obviously you have to have concrete evidence to convict him of that, which is why he was absolutely right to fight it. Because he said, I don't care what Greg Williams or anybody else has to say. I'm telling you what I did not do. That's what I am telling you. So he was in a position of strength. In the case of Tom Brady, the footballs were deflated. You're the quarterback. You touch the football more than anybody. You're the one that gets the snap to you from behind center. You're the one handing it off to running backs. You're the one throwing it to tight ends and to receivers, and in some cases, running backs coming out of the backfield to catch passes. You touch the ball more than anybody. So you can sit there and say, well, I didn't tell somebody something, and it might be an issue of veracity, whether you believe them or don't believe them. But there is no debating that the footballs were deflated. Whereas in the case of Jonathan Vilma, how are you going to beat him at a debate about his character? You don't know what was in his heart. Unless you can find some money trail where he actually received money, it's essentially you saying, oh, you went out there to put a bounty against guys. And Jonathan Vilma saying, no, I did no such thing. This case is entirely different from Bountygate. So his advice is appreciated, but the legs upon which Tom Brady has to stand are considerably more shaky than what Jonathan Vilma had to say.
Very interesting. I have two quick responses to what you just said. How do you know for sure the footballs were deflated? Because there is a glaring discrepancy in the Wells report we talked about yesterday that Mr. Wells himself failed to answer, handed the phone off to his partner to answer, who gave a very murky, hazy, sort of unconvincing answer about which gauge was used by Walt Coleman, the referee, before the game, and which gauge was then used to measure the footballs at halftime. Was it this gauge or was it this gauge? It's murky. Then I read yesterday this research firm that was hired by the Wells Group and ultimately by the league to evaluate and verify the findings at halftime by the league has come under fire before from critics, including engineers, attorneys, and academics, who say the company tends to deliver to clients the reports they need to mount a public defense. This is all going to come up in court. I don't know whether this is true or not, but what I'm saying is all this is still murky to me about whether they were underinflated. Then let me make one last point. It is highly possible that all Tom Brady ever said to those equipment men, those ball boys, if you will, was, I like my footballs inflated at the lower end of regulation. And they took it upon themselves, or maybe they had an order from above to take it down another notch, a step below regulation. How do you know that? The Wells report proves nothing on that account. There is no smoking gun tying Tom Brady to ordering the footballs to be underinflated to below regulation. Sure, he might have said, put him at the low end, but should he be judged guilty off that? That's what they're going to try to prove in court. Trust me.
Well, I mean, I definitely understand and appreciate your point, Skip Bayless, but forgive me because I read the report as well, but forgive me for surmising that the one thing that wasn't debatable is that the footballs were deflated.
Well, some were and some weren't.
Allow me to finish. What I'm saying to you is that the week before Super Bowl week, Bill Belichick addressed it. The week before Super Bowl week, Tom Brady addressed it. The Super Bowl week itself, Robert Kraft addressed it. And the issue in question was never whether or not the footballs were deflated. The issue in question was what level of guilt should be attached to Tom Brady and Bill Belichick for the footballs actually being deflated. So I just glossed over the issue of actual deflation of the football.
Okay.
I've been assuming that everyone understood that 11 of the 12 footballs were deflated. The only issues in question was whether or not Tom Brady and Bill Belichick directly or indirectly had something to do with it. So
okay.
I'm not even going, I mean, all the stuff that you just dropped from the Wells report, I'm not going to dispute any of that. I am telling you that Tom Brady, I never once heard him deny that the footballs were deflated. I never once heard Bill Belichick deny that the footballs were deflated. A matter of fact, what I recall was Bill Belichick giving some kind of, and he was far from a scientist, as he openly admitted, but he was giving reasons as to why the footballs may have been deflated.
No.
So, I mean, what do you want me to say?
Okay.
I can't make an argument that the footballs weren't deflated.
But if you carefully read the Wells report, one gauge had them properly inflated, and a second gauge had them underinflated. Well, I don't know. Look, I don't know. But this is going to have to be proven in a court of law at some point.
Well, look, so to that end, gentlemen, you guys are already taking us there. Let's consider the next step. Meanwhile, our Lester Munson says if Brady and his unreal legal team decide to sue the league, there will be a series of challenges for the quarterback. More than likely, they will not pan out in Brady's favor. Let's listen to what he had to say earlier on Mike and Mike.
I can easily see that Brady and his lawyers may decide to sue the National Football League. I have serious doubts about whether Brady can succeed in such a lawsuit, and I think that Brady and his group should very carefully consider what might happen in the lawsuit. In the Theodore Wells investigation, Brady did not give up his cell phone. He did not give up his emails. He did not give up his text messages. He stonewalled the investigators for the NFL. He will not be able to do that in any lawsuit, so that when the NFL defends itself in the lawsuit, it will obtain by court process everything that Brady has refused to give up. So things in the lawsuit could become even more incriminating than they were in the original investigation. And I think Brady and his group should very carefully consider that.
He said things could become more incriminating for Brady, but it also works the same way for both sides. Obviously, if he tries to sue the league, they'll have to put some things out as well. All right, so listen, Skip Bayless, your reaction to what Lester Munson has to say.
Stephen A. Smith, my reaction, first of all, is that I've known Lester Munson for a long time, from my days in the town you're in right now, Chi-Town. Lester is brilliant. Lester is a lawyer by trade, and he is a great legal analyst. So I always sit and I listen to the whole interview today on Mike and Mike because it's spellbinding and it's illuminating to me. And his whole idea of fraught with peril could be a lawsuit, could be disastrous for Tom Brady and company, I completely respect and acknowledge. He brought up the point, we just talked about it, Tom Brady would have to give up his cell phone and his computer records, blah, blah, blah. We get all that. Those two guys in question, those two ball boys, Jim McNally, John Jastrzynski, could they turn on Tom Brady in court, especially McNally, off the texts that we saw, which were very derisive, aimed back at Tom Brady? Oh, he doesn't like his football. Well, watch, I'll give him a rugby ball next time. Well, could that guy turn on Tom Brady and be a very damaging witness against Tom Brady in court? Sure he could. My question to you, Mr. Smith, is this. You don't think that Tom Brady has carefully considered all of the above? The moment he hired Jeffrey Kessler, I said, game on. We talked about him yesterday. Some people in our audience don't know Jeffrey Kessler. I certainly know of him for years and years, having covered the NFL. This man is brilliant as a superstar attorney, and he is unyielding. He is a pain in the behind for the National Football League. He has a long history of taking on and often defeating the National Football League. And Stephen A., my case to you is that there's no way that Jeffrey Kessler would have taken this case if he thought he couldn't win it. If he thought he was fighting a losing battle from Jump Street, there's no way Jeffrey Kessler needs this case. But he reviewed the facts. He obviously had a lengthy discussion with one Tom Brady, who convinced him, the way he's convinced confidants I've spoken to, 100% innocent, wrongly convicted. And Jeffrey Kessler said, I'll take the case. Again, I'm going to reiterate to you, I'm sure Tom's defense will be, I only said from the start of my career, I like them inflated to the lower end of regulation. That's what they will try to prove. The ultimate target here for a Jeffrey Kessler will be none other than the commissioner of the National Football League. It will come down to Kessler versus Roger Goodell in a court of law. Again, they'll sue to get the proper arbitrator in. You know, they'll try to do Harold Henderson, the league man, for the first go-around, and they'll sue to get an objective arbitrator, and I don't know who that'll be. Maybe it'll be Paul Tagliabue again for round 2. I don't know. But in the end, I think Goodell's job could be on the line here. Certainly his credibility could be back on the line. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, my thought is your point about Jeffrey Kessler means absolutely nothing to me. Keep in mind that Jeffrey Kessler historically works for unions, not individual players. And if I remember correctly, I think it's the union who brought Kessler in, not Tom Brady. That's point number one.
No,
point
it was Tom Brady's choice. Trust, I know for a fact that Tom Brady did his homework and asked around, and everybody said, you got to get Jeffrey Kessler.
Well, everybody but I'm saying to you, everyone with the union historically says Jeffrey Kessler. And Jeffrey Kessler has never seen a case he doesn't think he can win. That's point number two. Point number three, his targeting Roger Goodell, it's another way, and I'm not knocking the union strategy here, so I don't want it to come across as if I'm sitting there and saying something negative about the union, because I have no problem with them whatsoever, and I have no problem with what they're doing. But if this somehow impugns the integrity of Roger Goodell and sort of dissipates his power to some degree. In other words, if through this case the union somehow, some way is able to diminish his level of power, ultimately accomplishing something that they couldn't pull off during collective bargaining negotiations, that's just another, another point for them. Make no mistake about it, this is not just about Tom Brady. The union loves being involved in this because they got their behinds handed to them by the National Football League during collective bargaining negotiations, as far as I'm concerned. And as a result of that reality, ever since then, they nip and tuck every chance they get to do something to diminish the power of Roger Goodell, because they couldn't pull it off during collective bargaining negotiations. This is another maneuver in that direction, as far as I'm concerned. Excuse me. But in the end, what it comes down to, more importantly than anything else, Skip Bayless, is this. You can always make a legal argument, particularly in cases primarily involving circumstantial evidence. Of course, Tom Brady has a case. Of course, Tom Brady can sit there and get his suspension reduced. Of course, Tom Brady can make a case for himself that he was wrongly convicted by the National Football League, et cetera, et cetera. We all know this is coming, but Tom Brady still had ample opportunity beforehand to do this, and he dropped the ball in that regard. And so as a result of it, that's going to contribute to this as well. And keep in mind, the courts historically, Skip, of the mindset that they are hesitant to get involved on this level with these kind of things, because this falls directly under the purview of the National Football League. It was collectively bargained, and when you find yourself in a situation where you're bringing the courts involved, they're ultimately willing to push it right back to the National Football League, ergo Roger Goodell. So when you take it into consideration, anything's possible. You can make a case in favor of Tom Brady. We can all make a case against Tom Brady. In the end, Tom Brady's goal is to get the suspension reduced, if not flat out eradicated, so he doesn't have to miss any games. I don't believe he'll pull it off. I believe he might pull off a reduction, but not complete eradication. But the one thing I do know is that half of the football world is going to question your integrity forevermore, and Tom Brady, in part, allowed it to happen.
Okay,
that's
wait a second.
What the bottom line is.
I am completely lost on what you're saying. He had ample opportunity to do what before? To say something publicly?
No, well, I'm just talking about in terms of your testimony to the National Football League, the Ted Wells investigation accusing you of not fully cooperating.
I don't know what his testimony
Benson
was. It's not included in the Wells report.
Well, what happens is Ted Wells elaborated on what Tom Brady wasn't willing to, in terms of when Tom Brady wasn't willing to show those text messages or those emails. That resonates, Skip Bayless. It certainly resonated with Troy Vincent, the executive VP of the National Football League, who's on the record questioning whether Tom Brady gave full cooperation. So, again, you're talking about the courts. And I'm saying to you, anytime you take something to the courts from a literal and legalese perspective, of course you have a point, Skip, in terms of the suspension ultimately being reduced, if not eradicated. It certainly could happen, although I doubt it will. I think there is a better chance of a reduction as opposed to complete eradication, but it doesn't negate the fact that ultimately the questions that you had about Tom Brady, the questions that I had about Tom Brady, and others, it may not matter to him now, but it's going to matter even more as this drags on.
What I'm hearing back from you right here, right now, is that your mind has been completely closed by an investigation for which the NFL paid almost, or maybe up to $5 million.
No, Skip.
that concluded it's more probable than not that he generally knew about the underinflated footballs.
No, Skip,
Okay.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying to you is that before an investigation even took place, I came on the air with you right here on this show, and I said to you there is no way in hell that 11 of 12 footballs can be deflated, and Tom Brady didn't know. I told you I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I told you I didn't think it warranted a suspension. Just don't tell me he didn't know. You were saying, no, it's not about him. It's about Bill Belichick. And I was saying, no, it's more
Still
about
think
Tom
that.
Brady because he's the quarterback. So my point is I didn't need the Ted Wells investigation to tell me what it told me. I believed from day one that any quarterback knows that the footballs are deflated. That
Okay.
was my position. And Tom Brady lost me when he tried to act like he didn't know anything.
Well,
That's
point
where he lost me.
Okay, you know where you lose me? Usually, you're so skeptical and suspicious of these reports commissioned by the National Football
I
League.
usually am.
Remember the
Yeah.
Mueller report on Ray
Yeah.
Rice concluded
Yeah.
that Roger Goodell, no executive in the NFL office, had any knowledge of the in-elevator video. Remember that? That was the conclusion
And I didn't
of that
believe
report.
that for
and
one
we're
second.
like,
Right.
stop it.
Right.
Yeah, you
Stop
paid
it.
the former FBI director to find that for you, really? And we're all laughing at it or scoffing at
Yep.
it.
Sure.
But now you're taking this one to the bank. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical.
Hold on, wait a minute. Because everything that you're saying is predicated on the investigation because you have a problem with this 4-game suspension based on just the circumstantial evidence without a smoking gun. The difference between your position and mine, just for clarification, is that I don't need and I never needed the investigation to convince me that Tom Brady knew about deflated footballs. Now, when it comes to the amount of the suspension, that's when I'm influenced by football players who have told me that deflated football gives you an advantage. And it's very, very important. But I have always believed that Tom Brady had to know the footballs were deflated, and to act like you are just an innocent bystander in all of this is utterly ridiculous. I've never needed the Wells investigation to tell me that.
All right, we'll pick this up a little later on. Let's leave it right here. Again, Tom Brady suspended for 4 games. We're talking about the what if. He has a deadline to appeal said suspension, 5 p.m. Eastern today. Obviously, we'll keep you posted. What do you think of Tom Brady's image? It's been tarnished. We want to make sure you get your voice heard as well. Go to the Twitter. Use the hashtag #BradyLosesShine. Vote yes or no, and we'll have the results coming up a little later on in the show. Speaking of the game, tonight at 8 Eastern, as just mentioned, LeBron James and the Cavs want to get it all done. Coming off a near-flawless game where he had 0 turnovers, Kyrie Irving also looked healthy. James is 7-1 all-time when leading 3-2 in a best-of-7 series. Meanwhile, the Bulls are expecting an extra lift tonight from Pau Gasol, who will play. So, Stephen A., you're in Chicago. What do you expect from tonight's game? Can the Cavs get it done?
Oh, they can get it. They can get it done. I don't believe they will, though. I predicted the Cavaliers would win this series in 7 games, and I'm going to hold firm to that. The Bulls mounted a furious comeback in Game 5. They could have easily won that game. Taj Gibson's got to keep himself under control, even though Dellavedova did leg lock him. In the end, you got to keep your composure, maintain composure, particularly with Pau Gasol being out. You simply can't afford to make that kind of mistake that's going to get yourself ejected because you helped cost your team a victory. So Taj Gibson's got to keep his head in the game. He's got to make sure to keep his emotions in check. Derrick Rose has got to play better. Jimmy Butler showed up and scored 29 points. It was Derrick Rose that struggled. Kyrie Irving's got a right foot injury, a left knee injury, and he still outplayed Derrick Rose. That simply can't happen. Derrick Rose has to go into attack mode, get to the basket, make things happen, because that's when he's at his best. But having said all of that, I think what we saw in Game 5, as impressive as it was, I think it's something that the Cavaliers probably will save for Game 7 if things get a bit dicey, because they don't want to expend their energy and spend themselves before Game 7. And I think the Bulls will definitely be in it. They're not gonna go down easy. Joakim Noah is gonna rebound. He's gonna defend. Pau Gasol is scheduled to play tonight after missing the last 2 games. He's going to be in that lineup, which is going to help them as well, at least offensively. And I think that as a result of that and that momentum, they're going to be able to ride it and win Game 6 here in Chicago tonight. But again, it will be tough, particularly if the coaching staff of the Cleveland Cavaliers do what they did in Game 5. Like LeBron James said, they put him in a position to win, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. Black gets crucified all the time. We got to give credit where credit is due. He did the job. He got them to make sure they rebounded more. They had 8 offensive rebounds in the second half of Game 5, and LeBron James played a lot in the post because Kyrie Irving was able to run up and down the floor and play that point guard spot, which positioned LeBron not to have on-ball responsibility so much as he had done in the previous 4 games. So he was able to take advantage of that and exploit the Bulls. If they do that in Game 6, it can get very, very interesting. I suspect they won't be able to for this particular game, however. I think the Bulls are going to win. They'll pull away late. They'll probably win by about 7 or 8 points and force a Game 7 before they lose in Cleveland for Game 7.
Okay, so just off the top of your head, give me a score. Just throw one out there.
Off the top of my head, I would sit there and say something along the lines of 98-91.
Bulls. I had Cavs winning this series in 6 games, and I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to say the Cavs win a battle tonight, and it'll down to the wire battle. I'm going to go 102-100 visiting team, LeBron's team, because I believe that LeBron James will close out the Bulls tonight. Obviously, if we go back 2 games, LeBron James buzzer beater saved one of the worst playoff games I've seen him play in terms of inefficiency. It was an eyesore of a game for LeBron James, and he canceled it all out with one conviction shot where he just took the ball, went straight up, and said, I'm going to end this game, and he did. And he came off that game and played one of the top all-around games I have ever seen him play. And I closely watch every LeBron playoff game, but that one in Game 5 at home was special. To score 38 points on only 24 shots, to have 3 blocks and 3 steals, and 0 turnovers after, as you pointed out, Stephen A., he had 8 in Game 4, and he had averaged 6 for the first 4 games of this series. 0 turnovers. Way to go, LeBron. I just think he found the magic formula, as you pointed out. He's playing in the post more. He's attacking more. The Bulls cannot stop LeBron James. He is still the best player on the planet when he decides to play the way he plays best. And he will be the best player on the floor tonight in the house that Michael Jordan built, the house in which he hit the buzzer beater the other day, actually, to win Game 4 and maybe save the series for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously, it will help tonight if Kyrie Irving has another sort of miraculous return with 25 more points on 9 of 16 shots. I don't know how he did it the other night, as you say, left knee and bad right foot that could require some surgical procedure after the season. Man, so if he can keep doing that to take a little pressure off LeBron and allow him to play in the post, I just think it's advantage Cavs. I know Powell's going to try to play. I don't know how hard he can go or how far he can go with that hamstring. Taj has got a knee issue that he's fighting. Derrick Rose had the stinger the other night. What did he miss? His last 11 shots, went 0 for 6 in the fourth quarter. I just think they can beat this team and that they'll want to finish it off tonight, and they will finish off the Bulls tonight. And I believe LeBron will play at a high level tonight and be the star once again of this game.
It's entirely possible because he's LeBron James, and he may not want a Game 7 desperately because they may desperately need that rest or what have you. But again, there is no Kevin Love. Again, Kyrie Irving is not 100% healthy. Neither is Iman Shumpert. So when you take all of those things into consideration, clearly their preference would be to finish Chicago off. But if you know you're in a dogfight and things are simply not going your way, whereas you push, you put the foot to the pedal and do everything you can to rev it up to make sure you escape. I think that Cleveland may be of the mindset that we always have Game 7 back on our home court.
Right.
And remember, LeBron is the one experienced dude. Everybody else, this is a first for them. And so as a result of that, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for them to sit there and go all out. I find it very, very difficult to believe with the injuries you have to take into consideration that they're not going to be a bit reticent, recognizing that they have a Game 7 on their home floor. That's what I believe is going to happen tonight.
Last quick point, and it's a question for you.
Yeah.
the X factor tonight is Bulls' resolve as it regards their, what, lame duck, can I call him, head coach? I guess he's a lame duck. I keep reading that he's on his way out. So will they fight to the death, quote unquote, for Thibodeau, or will they give up more quickly thinking, well, this is going nowhere, we're going to have a new coach next year? I'm not sure where their heads are in regards to their on-the-way-out head coach.
Well, I think as it pertains to effort, the one thing we have to give Tom Thibodeau credit for, outside of being an exceptional coach, one of the top 3 coaches in the game and probably the best defensive coach in the game, I think the one thing we have to give him credit for is that we've never watched a Bulls team and said they didn't play hard. They always play hard. Whether it's for him or themselves or whatever, there's never a shortage of effort. The problem with the Chicago Bulls is that Tom Thibodeau is not adroit offensively, you know, when it comes to coaching the offensive side of the ball, and it shows in their play because they have significant droughts. I mean, there are times when they go 6 minutes, 7 minutes, just without scoring a field goal. They really, really struggle. And that's their problem offensively. So to me, I don't think it's going to be a matter of effort. The effort will be there. I just think it's going to be a matter as to whether or not they're actually making shots. They usually don't make shots. That's their problem. And if he loses this series, he'll definitely be gone. If by some miracle they're able to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals, I'm told it's going to be very difficult for them to let him go, although they may elect to anyway.
Well,
that will be interesting.
I am predicting he coaches his final game for the Bulls tonight.
All right. Well, listen, LeBron James, again, 7-1 all-time when he leads the series 3-2. So we'll see what happens. Skip thinks it'll be over tonight. It could go 7, though.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Al Horford snatched an offensive rebound and dropped in the winning basket with 1.9 seconds left to give the top-seeded Atlanta Hawks an 82-81 victory over the Wizards. Horford saved the night with 23 points, 11 rebounds, 5 blocked shots, and now they have a 3-2 lead in the semifinals.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't supposed to be involved in the play at all. You know, I was supposed to just set a screen for Kyle, which I did. And you know, we put our trust in Dennis. He had a great drive. And then when I just saw the ball go up, I just ran in there. You know, it was just a hustle play.
John Wall back in the lineup and played well with 15 points and 7 assists, but as a team, the Wizards had their worst offensive game this postseason. Bigger picture, though, what was the biggest reason the Wizards lost the game? Stephen A., biggest reason they lost the game?
Well, the biggest reason they lost the game was Nene, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, John Wall comes back. He gives you 37 minutes. He shoots 7 of 16 from the field. He finishes with about 15 points, 7 assists, 4 steals. And more importantly, he contributed to defending Jeff Teague, which is what I was saying, Skip, all along. John Wall is the X factor in all of the success the Washington Wizards has had. He's definitely developed into a really, really good player. He's going to be one of the elite point guards in the NBA in years to come because of his athleticism, his speed, and more importantly, his defense. Kyle Lowry for the Toronto Raptors, Jeff Teague for the Atlanta Hawks. They have effective games when he's not on the floor. But his size and athleticism and his willingness to defend makes him incredibly formidable and difficult to deal with because he not only can do things offensively, but he disrupts what opponents want to do offensively because of his ability to neutralize point guards. Having said all of that, Nene has given me nothing in this series for the Washington Wizards. Absolutely nothing, with the exception of one game. He's been an absolute no-show, and you expect more from him because he's better than that. Now, yesterday he did, you know, he was boxing out somebody, sort of stumbled and tripped over, and that's how Al Horford came in and snatched the rebound with 2 hands for the putback. So I hold Randy Whitman somewhat accountable for the loss as well, because if you're the coach, you know they're going to crash the boards. You know you only need 2 points, not a 3, to win. rebounding the basketball is incredibly important. Schroeder drives to the basket. John Wall blocks his shot, but Al Horford comes up in there, and snatches the ball away from Nene, who was stumbling over. Well, why wasn't Marcin Gortat in the game with Nene? You needed another big body. Paul Pierce is a closer. There's no question. You want him to be Mr. Big Shot. But at age 36, 37 years of age, why is he on the court for the last play defensively when you know you're trying to neutralize the opposition from scoring a basket? Otto Porter obviously was out there. He should have been. John Wall was out there. He should have been. Nene was on the court for rebounding purposes. He should have been. But Gortat should have been in the game, in my estimation, with them. And maybe some other defender outside of Paul Pierce. That did not happen. So when I look at this particular loss, I do put it on Coach Randy Whitman, and I do put it on Nene, although I'm still of the belief that this series is not over. I expect the Wizards to win Game 6, and I'm not ruling out them going back to Atlanta to win a Game 7.
By the way, Nene did get his hands on that
ball.
rebound.
Yes.
He had hands on ball.
Yes,
and
he did.
Al Horford just wanted that basketball in that game more than Nene did at that split second. I agree he was falling down, boxing out. I get all that. But when you get your hands on the ball, you got to control the basketball because you're controlling the series and the game. And it's all coming down to, can you hold on to the basketball? Because John Wall did block Schroeder's shot. So that was beautiful. That looked like the defensive play of the game following the Mr. Big Shot offensive play of the game by Paul Pierce, the corner three that had put them up. Now, I got a couple of quick takeaways for you. First of all, big picture, that was as poorly played an exciting NBA playoff game as I have ever watched. It was, most of it for me, Stephen A., was an eyesore of two teams crumbling under the Game 5 pressure that they're not really experienced at, except for the truth, except for Paul Pierce, who's trying to lift his mates up above it.
Right.
But it was just hard to watch because it was one stumble after another bumble after another crumble. And I'm saying, what are you guys doing? The final score is 82-81. They were having a hard time scoring, both teams. They both had long droughts. But now let's get back to the drought. The Wizards are up 9 with 6 minutes plus to go, just about 6:15 to go. Up 9. I know you're on the road. I know you're against the best team in the Eastern Conference in the regular season, but you have to close that deal. So in that sequence, from 6 minutes down to 2 minutes, they had 0 for 7 shooting with 2 turnovers. Paul Pierce missed a couple of shots. Bradley Beal missed a couple of shots. John Wall missed a couple of shots and had a turnover along with an Otto Porter turnover. So that's 9 empty trips in a row. And you look up, and Atlanta's up 5. You're up 9, they're up 5. You just can't do it. Then you've just thrown the game up for grabs. And again, Paul Pierce almost pulled it out with the 2 late threes. And then it brings you back to Al Horford. May I please say, I know he doesn't resonate with our audience. I know he's not a big name. He is simply the most underrated and unheralded player in the entire National Basketball Association.
That's fair.
I've watched him for years, Stephen A. Every time I turn on a Hawks game that's close late, Al Horford makes a shot or a play. Every time I turn it on. He'll sit down there and shoot that set shot. He made a 3 last night from the corner. I'm going, he can do that? They're clutch shots. They're big shots. He is the rock upon which this team is built that had the best, obviously, Eastern Conference record this year. Go ahead.
Skip, you make a good point, and you'll appreciate this. People forget this was the teammate of Joakim Noah when they won back-to-back national titles at Florida.
Yep.
Al Horford is a winner. Al Horford finds a way to get things done. It ain't pretty.
Nope, not
but
pretty.
He rebounds. He scores. More importantly, he defends. And he is the rock of the Atlanta Hawks and has been since he has arrived. And let me tell you something. You can't underestimate and you can't say enough about the job that he does. He's a special player.
He's a special player.
But I will tell you this. In a Game 7, even if it's in Atlanta, and I have to bet my money in the waning moments on him or Paul Pierce.
I'm with you.
I'm rolling with Paul Pierce.
I am too.
In a Game 7.
He's done
So
it
when
too
I
many
look,
times.
it's the one thing the one thing that makes this very, very interesting, and we should encourage everybody to watch this series, Washington's got to show up to produce in Game 6 because they're young enough to take it for granted that even with their back against the wall, that they could show up and win a Game 6. They need to remember they lost all 3 home games in last year's semifinals to the Indiana Pacers. Don't take it for granted that you're going to win tomorrow night. But if they win tomorrow night, Game 6, Game 7, it's not money that the Atlanta Hawks are going to end up winning that basketball game because outside of Horford, who do you have to rely on that you can definitively say will produce in a Game 7? I don't know who that person is on Atlanta. I know who it is on the Wizards.
Which brings me to the issue facing Coach Budenholzer going into Game 6 now on the road back in Washington. Jeff Teague made the All-Star team this year. Jeff Teague is acknowledged as the point guard leader of this team. As Teague goes, the Hawks go, or so we're told. I never loved Jeff Teague when he was at Wake because I would turn it on and he would turn it off. I'd turn on the TV, and some games he was into it, and some games it's like, I don't know if I feel like playing tonight. No denying the ability to create the sort of, it's almost a subtle quickness that he has. It doesn't even translate to your eye. He can get in the lane anytime he wants to get in the lane, and he can make big threes himself sometimes. Some nights, I don't know why, just doesn't feel like playing. So what did Coach Bud do last night? He sat him. He went with little young Dennis Schroeder down the stretch for the last 5.5 minutes of that game. Teague sat and watched. Hey, I don't know that he loved that. I didn't see any quotes after the game. I don't know if he even spoke to the media after the game. Now, I'm sorry, the little Schroeder's growing on me. He's got huge talent, too.
He's good.
And remember, they called the last play of the game to win the game for Schroeder. And again, he got blocked by Wall. But Jeff Teague could be a big issue facing this team in Game 6.
It could be, but keep in mind, Game 5, Jeff Teague had 26 points.
He did. Well,
one turnover. Listen, one turnover, played 32 minutes. He played 31 minutes last night. The difference is that he had 7 turnovers because he was going up against Wall. Schroeder's longer.
You can make that case.
Schroeder's longer. He's longer. He's a little bit more athletic. He's not miniature. He's longer, and Wall doesn't cause the problems for him, or didn't seem to cause the problems for him in Game 6 that he caused Teague. So keep that in mind.
All right, so really quickly here, Al Horford on the last play, he said, again, he wasn't supposed to be there, but he ran over there at the last minute. That's why you said he's one of the most underrated players in the league. They're not giving him credit.
The most.
All right, we leave it there. And remember, Game 6 tomorrow, 7 o'clock Eastern. We asked you earlier in the show if you thought Tom Brady's image had been tarnished or destroyed. Here's what you said. The Twitter poll results are in. 56% say yes, 44% say no. Is that about right?
No, I think that's high on the no side. Right.
What do you think, Stephen A?
Oh, it should be higher on the yes side. And the reason why is because understand that perspective also gets included with image. They're not two separate things. Perspective and image are pretty much intertwined.
By nearly a 2-to-1 margin, those who describe themselves as avid football fans believe Tom Brady and the Patriots cheated. Those fans said they support Brady's 4-game suspension and the team's $1 million fine and loss of draft picks when asked about Deflategate penalties in a national poll conducted by ESPN and ABC, obviously by telephone and cell phone. This is what they say. 69% of avid fans think Brady cheated. Most support him, though, as a future Hall of Famer. 52% of all Americans see Brady as a good role model, but the public is divided on whether the Patriots' Super Bowl title is tainted. Let's take that word tainted as the operative one here. Joining us now is our NFL analyst, Darren Woodson. We're talking about Tom Brady's image. No matter what happens at the end of the day, do you believe that his image is tarnished?
I think there's always going to be the feeling from public opinion, especially because this thing has grown legs, that his image is going to take a hit. If you're asking the true football fan and a majority of the football players, the NFL guys that have played this game, we all know that Tom Brady, in my opinion, Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of this era, hands down.
Okay.
And when you mention him over history, he's going to go in the history books as probably being number 2, 1 or 2, next to Joe Montana as the greatest quarterback of our generation. That has not changed, in my opinion. Regardless of this rules infraction, which I feel it is, a rules infraction, I don't feel like his image he should be tarnished from what he is. They won the Super Bowl outright. But the ball was plain and simple. It was a level playing field. They won that game outright. I think as a public image, I think you ask my mother, who I was on the phone with on the way up here, she'll tell you in a heartbeat, yeah, he's a cheater. But that doesn't. But what happened in that situation does not, in my opinion, call him a cheater. I think he's pushing the limits, which we all push the limits and push the envelopes, whether it be the team or individual players. Me personally, I'm going to push the limits to get a competitive edge on you.
But they're calling that gamesmanship. Can you explain the difference to me as a player?
Look, so I think gamesmanship comes in the fact of, offensive linemen putting grease on themselves to get a competitive advantage, so they can't get to a opposing player can't pull his jersey. Tanking it. We call it scuba. They call it scubaing. When a defensive team is on their heels and the offense is in a 2-minute situation and the defense can't stop them, you have a player that'll lay it down on the field to get a timeout. We all do. That's gamesmanship.
It's not cheating?
Well, it depends on who you're asking. You're asking a defensive guy, hey, we're trying to get a break. It's just how we play. In free agency, you can't tell me that these teams aren't talking to players and agents before they sign them in free agency. It's a part of the game, and there are rules in place for a reason. The NFL is trying to stop it. And I think one thing we got to understand right now, the climate with the NFL right now, just the climate as a whole. They've gone through so much. The Ray Farmer incident where he's texting from the booth. The Rich McKay suspension where the Atlanta Falcons are piping in noise. All the infractions that we had off the field, the Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson. The climate right now has left it that the NFL is going to have a heavy hand. And they have an extremely heavy hand in this situation. And I think this is no different. But I don't think it tarnishes in the end, I don't think it tarnishes who Tom Brady is as a football player.
All right. Stephen A.
The more I listen to folks like Darren Woodson and others, the more disgusted I get at Tom Brady. And here's why. Gamesmanship, cheating, finding a competitive edge in between the lines or whatever the case may be. We're talking about Tom Brady here. We're talking about one of the great players to have ever played this game. I think it's absolutely incredulous, beyond the pale, disrespectful for everyone or anyone out there who would try to use this to taint his legacy and his reputation, to act as if his 4 Super Bowl titles weren't legitimate, to act as if we have to look at him differently. He's not one of the greatest players anymore. And more importantly than anything else, to completely eradicate everything that he has been and everything that he has represented as a role model, as an ambassador for the NFL, and all of a sudden, that stuff is tarnished. That's ridiculous. Skip Bayless, Darren Woodson, I believe this man knew that the footballs were deflated. I believe this man had something to do with the footballs being deflated. And in no way do I believe that should affect his legacy or his reputation, not just as a great football player, but as a man. Because I find this to be relatively innocuous in the grand scheme of things. I understand people who have played the game will sit there and say it gives you an unfair competitive advantage. I get football players making that argument and saying that he tried to get over, he tried to get caught. But one of the people that have been incredibly outspoken about this was my man Chris Carter, our colleague here at ESPN. And as outspoken as Chris Carter was, guys, I asked him. Shannon Sharp said Tom Brady, he wouldn't even go show up at the Hall of Fame if Tom Brady was inducted right now, because as far as he's concerned, he's a cheater. What do you say to that, Chris Carter? Chris Carter's response was, now that's going a bit extreme. I believe that Tom Brady tried to get an unfair advantage here. But in no way do I believe that that impugns his integrity, his reputation, what he has accomplished as a football player, what he is as a man. We all make mistakes. We move on. He tried to get over with this. He is being called out on this. but that's as far as it should go. And the reason why I say I'm disgusted with Tom Brady is that as we sit here talking about him, once again, Skip Bayless, myself, to some degree Darren Woodson, and others have spoken up for Tom Brady more than Tom Brady himself. Tom Brady from day one should have been about the business of, these are deflated footballs. Okay, handle your business, Roger Goodell, but don't you dare sit up there and try to tarnish my reputation as a professional football player, as an ambassador of this league, and more importantly, as a man of integrity because of this deflate issue. You're making it bigger than what it is. Instead, Tom Brady elected to sit back, play possum, and act like, oh, see no evil, hear no evil, I don't know anything. He has contributed to making this far worse than it ever should have been. He should have relied on who he is as a man and who he is as a future Hall of Famer. And that should have spoken for itself rather than people like myself and Skip Bayless having to do it for him.
And what disgusts me is that you continue, Stephen A. Smith, to leap to the conclusion that Tom Brady is guilty as charged here. I am not convinced. I am still not convinced that he is guilty. I think it is still highly possible that early in Tom Brady's career, back to 2001, that he told his ball boys, I like my footballs inflated at the lower end of regulation. They took it from there, or maybe somebody from above ordered them to take it from there, or maybe those footballs, as there was glaring discrepancy in the Wells report, weren't underinflated. I'm still not sure about that. You could be right. I could be right. I'm not sure. Tom Brady deserves his day in court, and trust me, he's going to get it. It might be later than sooner because these things take time, which brings me back to our poll. There's a whole segment of people out there, including your mother and maybe my mother, who just, they want to believe that he's guilty. Maybe they were predisposed not to like Tom Brady out of a little resentment or jealousy or whatever. They just don't like the Patriots. They don't like Belichick. Whatever it is, psychological trigger that says, and he cheated. Well, in their minds, no matter what is about to come out in court down the road, you cannot change the minds of all these people. And I'm surprised that our Twitter poll that we did? Yeah. I was surprised that it was 52 to what? 40?
46 to 40.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Like, I'm surprised that the people who are on Brady's side are up in the 40s. You know, like, wow, really? I thought it would be 90 to 10 because it seems to me, just from my experiences out in public, most people I run into have decided he is a cheater, and he will always be, in their minds, a cheater. He could go to court and completely win, where he gets everything removed, all the games removed. He could get Goodell fired over this, and people would still say, yeah, but you know he cheated.
Skip, I have a question for you. Okay. I have a question for you, Skip. I need your help here. Skip Bayless, you read the report and then immediately came back and said you thought it incriminated Tom Brady. You acknowledged there was no smoking gun, but the preponderance of circumstantial evidence.
Circumstantial.
I'm not getting on you here. I'm not debating. I'm just asking a question.
Yeah.
I'm just asking a question.
Sure.
I'm saying to you, I'm at a loss as to how you can have a problem with people drawing a conclusion that you drew, even when you read the report.
I don't. But then I began to do my homework. Remember, it came out the night before, and the next morning at 10 o'clock, I'm on the air. And you got me dead to rights here. I'm reading the circumstantial. I'm mostly reading the text. I'm reading Deflator, the guy McNally calling himself the Deflator. And I'm saying, gee, this looks bad. Now, I think as a violation, this is a serious violation, maybe even more than you do. This is cheating because it doesn't just affect the quarterback's ability to throw a softer ball. It affects the running back's ability to hang on to the softer ball. And they do not fumble as an organization. That's been their mantra. And I think it could have helped if in fact, they were underinflated. So, to me, Stephen A., the next day, you said, what should the penalty be? And I said, that's a 4-game suspension. That's like PEDs to me. So it's 4 games, and that's what he got. Well, then I began to do my homework, and I told you, and I don't want to keep beating this to death, but I talked to 3 people close to Brady. And they're saying, he's telling us he is 100% innocent. Usually in these circumstances, they might tell a confidant, Yeah, they got me on this. You know, they got me dead to rights, but I'm going to fight it because I'm going to try to get it reduced to 2 games. He doesn't want it reduced at all. He wants it dismissed because he says, according to 3 people I know, he is completely innocent in this case.
Well, if that's the case, then why not just come out?
Because of what Jonathan Vilma said, the best way to do it is to let your lawyers fight.
I'm talking right when it happened. After that AFC Championship game, just be stronger at that point.
Exactly.
Accept it.
And Darren, and Darren, my point is this. Look, again, Skip, I'm not trying. I've never sat here and said Tom Brady sat there and said, well, I want the footballs deflated to this level, like getting technical and literal like that. My issue was, you're the quarterback. Don't tell me you don't know that the football is deflated. And then when asked about it, he played dumb. And that was my issue. So my point to you is that we can get into all the legalese. You have a point, Skip. I've read the report. You're not the only one speaking the sources. Both of us do. But in the end, Tom Brady lost me when he tried to pretend as if he knew nothing. There's no way you're the quarterback and you know nothing.
Okay, but wait.
You know nothing.
Okay, scenario. You make it clear within your organization, I like my footballs inflated at the lower end. Aaron Rodgers likes his at the top end. He likes the bigger ball.
Sure.
Okay? So what if that's all you know for the rest of your career? I made it clear I like him at the lower end. You think he's measuring the footballs with a gauge?
But no, that's possible, but that's what Darren is saying. That's all he had to say. He didn't even say that, Skip. He categorically did not know anything.
Exactly. And right after the AFC Championship game, when you're in that press conference, just tell them, listen, I like the balls a certain way. My equipment staff knows I like it a certain way, and I'll accept it. If the rules infraction is 25,000 or 200, whatever that number is, slap me on the wrist, we move on. But at least I understand as a fan that, Tom Brady likes the
NFL players.
Okay.
And the NFL players that spoke against him, all the NFL players, Skip, that have spoken against him said that was where their problem with him began, when he tried to act like he didn't know anything.
Okay, there are 2 public Tom Bradys. There's the one who does his radio spots that he's paid to do, and the next morning, remember, he laughed at that notion. Remember the WEI tape that we had? Now I've heard everything. He was laughing at it. Then there's the press conference Tom Brady, who has always been mealy-mouthed, golly gee, shrugging things off,
Skip.
like the guy next door. I'm sorry, that's the way he's always been.
Skip, but Skip, you're making a lot of concessions for his personality and stuff. But my God, Skip, this has been going on for months, man. Come on now.
Okay,
he could have said something.
What is he telling you right now? He hired Jeffrey Kessler, and he is going to legal war.
Now the legs. Now you're talking about public. Now the public opinion is really going to jump out there because now it has legs, and you're going to have a negative sense around. I mean, in the New England area, they're going to back him, but around the country, they're not going to back him.
Recipe is simple. Steph Curry makes his threes, the Warriors win, and when he doesn't, they lose. Last night was no different. Steph became the first player in NBA postseason history with at least 6 steals and 6 three-pointers in a game as the Warriors beat the Grizzlies. Steph Curry on the win.
We play a very entertaining, high-octane style of basketball, but as long as we're not rushing, moving the basketball from side to side like we preach all year, we're going to make shots because of the flow and the rhythm of our possessions, and that's what's changed since Game 2.
The Warriors are now 7-0 this postseason when Curry makes at least 3 three-pointers, 0-2 when he doesn't. So here's the question, Stephen A. Do you believe that the Warriors are the best team left in the playoffs?
Yes, I do. I do believe they're the best team left in the playoffs for a bevy of reasons. Number one, Steph Curry, the reigning league MVP, has answered the call. He's answered the bell, and there should be no question marks about him. That Game 4 in Memphis was pivotal, and for him to show up the way that he did that night and drop 33 on them, I can't say enough about him. He's my favorite player to watch in the league. He's absolutely spectacular, and even though his shooting percentage and his three-point shooting percentage numbers have dropped in these playoffs, he's still averaging 28, 6, and 5 in the postseason. There's nothing to question about him. Klay Thompson, averaging 20 points a game, shooting 47% from the field, 46% from three-point range. He's been absolutely stellar as well. But I'm going to tell you what makes Golden State, Skip, the best team in the playoffs. It's not just their record. It's not just their talent. It's not just the exceptional coaching job that we have to give Steve Kerr credit for doing, along with Alvin Gentry, his lead assistant. But it's also health. They're the one team that's healthy. Memphis right now, Skip, tell me your heart didn't go out to Tony Allen watching him on that bench last night in street clothes. You saw it in his face. He was sick to his stomach that he couldn't be out there playing. We know coming into the series that Mike Conley was limited because of what happened to his left eye. Got the eye socket pushed in, had to be operated on, missed 3 games. If Tony Allen and Mike Conley were healthy, I don't think we see 2 blowout losses in this series at the hands of the, by the Memphis Grizzlies. I don't think that happens. I think it's far more competitive than that, even though it's still 3-2 and could potentially be 3-3. So Memphis is not healthy. You look at the Los Angeles Clippers, who I firmly believe will close out the Houston Rockets tonight. Chris Paul and his hamstring, plus their lack of depth, makes them a bit inferior to Golden State. Then we go to the Eastern Conference. Chicago has trouble scoring, so they wouldn't beat Golden State. Atlanta is impressive, but let's face it, they ain't ready on that level. And then when you look at the Washington Wizards, we've seen their lapses as well, and I don't think they would be ready because you can't have Nene or Gortat or other individuals showing up sporadically. They got to show up every game. We can't rely on them. And then, of course, there's the Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron James. Kevin Love is out, and Kyrie Irving's not 100%. So if Kevin Love were healthy and Kyrie Irving were 100%, and somehow, some way Cleveland would have beat Golden State, I'm going to put my money on LeBron. But because you don't have all your horses available to you, and Golden State does, plus they're talented, it's almost by default. Not to say that their record doesn't matter, the talent that they have, which is big time, doesn't matter, the snipers that they have on their squad don't matter. All of those things work in their favor. But ultimately, they're the one elite team in this postseason who has remained healthy. No one else can say that. And that is what makes them the better team than everybody else in this postseason right now.
Yeah, they did lose Spates for here a little while anyway. Whatever. I'm with you. And I agree with your big picture. All these injuries, this spate of injuries across the landscape, it's taken a lot away from the playoffs for me as a fan. Heck, I miss Kevin Durant and Westbrook right now. I miss Kobe in the playoffs. Seriously.
No,
that's right.
I
Oh,
mean,
God,
seriously.
do I miss Kobe.
I mean, it's just not the same without all these supers. I miss Carmelo in the playoffs. I know that was a long shot, but these are the superstars that weren't around because of injuries.
And Skip, by the way, doesn't it annoy you that these injuries have been taking place considering the regular season games that these guys have sat out?
Yeah.
Hasn't that got I mean you're going to sit out some of the regular season games so you can be healthy for the playoffs, and then the playoffs come and nobody's healthy. It drives me nuts.
It drives me nuts, and I do miss my San Antonio Spurs, but that's a whole other issue.
Yeah,
now, back to quickly back to the question. Golden State, the best team left in the playoffs? Easily. And I'll tell you why, Stephen A., that a lot of people, the big point being missed here, we all fixate on, we're fascinated by Splash Brothers, as Carrie pointed out in her lead to this, making threes. They live and die by the three. Well, the truth is, in the end, I think they're living and dying by their defense. And it's hard to get it through your brain what this team is doing, but it led the NBA in defensive efficiency. And through 5 games of this series, Memphis has averaged 88.8 points per game. Think about that. 88. They're holding Memphis under, not that Memphis is an offensive juggernaut, because they're not. But to hold them, that's almost 10 points under their seasonal offensive average of 98.3. They're 88.8. Well, when you combine one of the best offenses, they were 1/10 of a point below the Clippers in regular season offense, with the best defense, guess what? You got the best team. So it's going to be hard to beat this team. It's going to be interesting if we get Clippers Golden State. But I don't know.
ESPN Radio, bringing you directly to the biggest events in sports.
Center field, well hit, Hunter back, out of here!
From opening day of baseball.
Throw to the plate. Safe at the plate.
Right through the World Series.
For the third time in 5 seasons, the San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
Whether it's LeBron, Chris Paul, or Kevin Durant, when the NBA tips off, ESPN Radio is right there when a champion is crowned.
Have a new world champion. The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
And when the magic of bowl season arrives, ESPN Radio is your home for the new college football playoff.
The college football playoff first national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The biggest events in sports can be found right here on ESPN Radio.
What are your thoughts about Jameis Winston?
Well, I think it's a consensus among Florida State fans and boosters that he was an embarrassment in a lot of ways to the university. He won a lot of ball games, probably one of the best football players that ever attended Florida State, but he hurt himself off the field. And the good news is he's young enough to get over that. You know it? And but he's got to do that. He just can't make those junior high school decisions that he made when he was in college.
Well, a day after legendary Florida State coach Bobby Bowden said that about Jameis Winston and was thinking that he was considered an embarrassment to the Florida State community, Bucs head coach Lovie Smith fired back by saying this: "That's a strong statement to make about any young man, that he is an embarrassment. Jameis Winston is not an embarrassment," and I don't think Bobby Bowden is speaking for Florida State in making a statement like that. Normally, when you're in the family, you protect the family. All right, Stephen A, Skip Bayless, I'll start with you first. Tell me, whose side are you on?
Stephen A, look, let me put it this way. I understand what Lovie Smith said yesterday. I liked it because it's what he should have said. He should have defended his very young new quarterback. But I'm on Bobby Bowden's side here because I think he got a bad rap. We love Paul Feinbaum. We love his show. We've had him on our show.
Yes, we do.
He is the best. And yet, what got a little lost in the translation was the full question that Paul asked Bobby Bowden that elicited this answer that we just heard. And I'm just going to read just quickly. This is Paul on his show saying, "Jameis Winston, many people thought he was an embarrassment to your great University of Florida State. He won the Heisman, won national championship, #1 player chosen. But the controversy," said Paul, "never seemed to leave him, including the day he was selected. He was sitting there in Bessemer, Alabama, on one of the greatest nights of his life, and he flashes the crab legs." Then we heard the question there, what are your thoughts on Jameis Winston? Well, clearly, there's nothing wrong with the question. It was an informational question, but it sets up Coach Bowden to say, I think it's a consensus among Florida State fans and boosters he was an embarrassment in a lot of ways to the university. Well, he was. We talked and talked and talked about it. But then Coach Bowden went on to say he was also maybe one of the greatest players who ever played at Florida State, and Coach Bowden coached there a long time. And the good news is that he's young and has a chance to mature. Well, that's a fair answer. I don't think he should be condemned for that answer. I think it was an honest answer. Again, I'm going to side with Coach Bowden, but I don't want to condemn Lovie for defending Jameis, which is his job. It's what he should have done. But again, I think in the context of what could be perceived as a little bit of a leading question, I think Coach Bowden was trying to please Paul there a little bit by jumping right to the conclusion, yeah. And again, the bottom line, the irony here, the painful irony for Coach Bowden is, in his tenure, he coached a number of players who were also an embarrassment under Bobby Bowden to the university. So that's why it seems a little hypocritical on Coach Bowden's part. But I thought his answer was pretty balanced.
Skip Bayless, I 100% agree with you. I can respect where Lovie Smith is coming from, but Lovie Smith is a grown man and a head coach, and he has an obligation to decipher particular words and their meaning. Bobby Bowden, the operative word in his entire statement is was. Not is an embarrassment, but was an embarrassment, because your past transgressions were embarrassing to the University of Florida State. That happens to be fact. That happens to be something that Lovie Smith himself cannot debate. Now, we wish Jameis Winston well, And obviously some of the situations that he found himself in were relatively innocuous. Obviously the sexual assault allegations were not. But definitely when it comes to how he behaved himself and how he came across from time to time, it was. And it was particularly embarrassing because we were talking about Florida State for all the wrong reasons. Bobby Bowden also highlighted a reality that Lovie Smith is not qualified to debate. And that is, I think it's a consensus among Florida State fans and boosters that he was an embarrassment. I think Bobby Bowden would know about that a little bit better than Lovie Smith. Mm-hmm. There's nothing to debate there. Bobby Bowden coached and won national championships and were considered one of the iconic figures in the history of college football. And it was done at Florida State. If anybody knows and can gauge the feelings, the tenor, the emotions of Florida State fans and boosters, I'm sorry, Skip, do you know anybody more qualified than Bobby Bowden to speak on that? No. I don't. No. I don't. So, again, we understand that Lovie Smith is coming to the aid of his new quarterback, and he wants to move forward. And he should have said that. Jameis Winston was a kid. He made mistakes, but we're moving forward, etc. But to come to his defense to this degree gives the impression and the indication that, again, you're trying to gloss and floss over apparent transgressions that don't need to be ignored. Yep. And it might behoove him to sit there and say, you know what? Jameis Winston made his share of mistakes, which he openly admits. We consider him a young man who made mistakes. We have no doubt that he's a better man for it. We have no doubt that he's going to be a star for this franchise, not just as a player, but as a human being, because I believe in Jameis Winston. And I believe he's going to be everything they're advertised, both on the field and I think off the field. He's going to be fantastic as well. But the reality is that what Bobby Bowden said was right on the money. And he's more qualified than anybody to speak on it. Nobody's saying that he didn't have his share of players under his stewardship where they were an embarrassment to the program. But he wasn't asked about that by the great Paul Feinbaum. Yep. He was asked about Jameis Winston.
Last point,
and he gave an honest answer.
The past tense is exactly right. I am all in on Jameis like you are. I think he's going to grow into the leader of this franchise. He was clutch on the field, and I think he leads young men off the field, and he has the great Derek Brooks and other Florida State alums to help mentor him off the field. So I'm all in.
Jorge Posada, who was teammates with Alex Rodriguez from 2004 to 2011 with the Yankees, was asked on CBS This Morning on Wednesday if the records of players who use performance-enhancing drugs are tainted. Here's what he had to say.
Should players who are known to have used steroids, should they be in the Hall of Fame?
No.
No.
No. No, I don't think it's fair for the guys that have been in the Hall of Fame that were play the game clean.
Even an Alex Rodriguez?
Yeah, I don't think it's fair. I really don't. I think the guys that need to be in the Hall of Fame need to be a player that played with no controversy.
Have you told him that?
No.
No. Would he be surprised to hear it?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. All right. He would be surprised to hear it. He's obviously heard it now. A-Rod was asked about those comments, Stephen A., about what Posada had to say. In your opinion, were his comments fair or foul?
They were fair. They were not foul at all, but I still respectfully disagree. Jorge Posada is a four-time champion with the New York Yankees, a member of the Core Four. We all know what a diehard Yankee fan I am. I just interviewed Jorge Posada the other day. Loved him, loved talking to him. You know how grateful I am for those great years, the New York Yankees with him, Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Andy Pettit and the crew gave me. I'm eternally grateful. But I respectfully disagree with him on this matter. I'm not interested in hanging out with Alex Rodriguez, certainly not having him over for dinner. I think he's a pathological liar. I think he threw people under the bus. I think both he and Ryan Braun should be ashamed of themselves for how they acted in their zest to cover their lies so much, the people that they were willing to hurt in the process. So when I see them exercising any level of contrition
suspension, to me, it shouldn't be for performance-enhancing drug use. It should be because of the individuals they were willing to throw under the bus to cover up their PED use. That's my problem with both of them. You know me, Skip. I'm of the mindset people were mad at A-Rod for using PEDs. I'm mad at him for not continuing it past September because so many Octobers he didn't show up. I'm like, if you're going to do it, damn it, continue doing it through October. Deliver me a couple of more World Series as opposed to stopping in September. That's my annoyance with Alex Rodriguez. But with that being said, I do think it's important to note this, Skip. Alex Rodriguez, everybody ain't smacking home runs. That Mitchell report had over 100 names, 103 to be exact. How many people smacked over 660 home runs? He's at 662 and counting. He has a lifetime batting average of 299. I can't ignore those kind of numbers. And when you take into account the fact that there was once upon a time, for a significant chunk of that time, in baseball where PEDs were not being tested for, the owners didn't seem to care. It was basically allowed. Well, the belief was no rules were really being broken. It wasn't until the game was changed in terms of more of an emphasis placed on, or eradicating supplements and the like. And it came to the forefront where Congress had them on Capitol Hill in 2005, and this movement that was preempted by former Commissioner Bud Selig. It wasn't until all of that stuff came about that this came into the mind's eye of the American public. So the bottom line is, for the vast majority of Alex Rodriguez's 21 years in Major League Baseball, he actually wasn't breaking rules. He was actually going along with what everybody else presumably was doing. So when I take that into consideration, I'm going to tell you that Alex Rodriguez may not be a first ballot Hall of Famer because you want to send a message about PED use, but at the same time, he ain't the criminal that people try to paint him out to be. And as a result, I think ultimately you have to put him and, of course, Barry Bonds and others into the Hall of Fame, because this wasn't an issue for so many years until after Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa had chased Roger Maris's single-season home run record. There was a chunk of time before that when this wasn't an issue at all, and Alex Rodriguez was smacking those home runs. So I'm going to say that eventually he will be a Hall of Famer, and he will deserve to be a Hall of Famer.
You omitted the name of Roger Clemens.
That's true.
Okay, and again, Posada threw in Clemens with A-Rod, and that was the only thing that was foul to me. It's fair for him to take his stand, but I'm not sure Clemens belongs in the same sentence with A-Rod. And I know some people will disagree.
Yeah.
But listen, when I look at what Roger Clemens did pre-PEDs, I think, in Boston, just take his Boston days alone, and you win 3 Cy Youngs, and you lead the league in ERA 4 times, 3 times in strikeouts. You win 3 times 20 games in a season, and you have the 20 strikeout performance against Seattle. Those are Hall of Fame numbers already. And then Dan Duquette dumps him, and he goes to Toronto. And then Brian McNamee testified. That's when Roger came to me and said, I need a little help here. And it started, I think, in Toronto, at least if you go on the testimony of McNamee. But did Roger lie after that? Well, then we know the controversy started. I get all that.
Right.
But again, it's like Barry Bonds. I look at Barry Bonds pre-PEDs, I'm pretty sure the skinnier Barry Bonds was a Hall of Famer already.
Yes, he was.
Okay, so that's just me on both Clemens and Bonds.
2 days after being released by the Patriots, the Ravens signed Kyle Arrington to a 3-year deal. After winning the Super Bowl, the Patriots have lost this. Take a look. Darrelle Revis, Brendan Browner, and free agency. They also got rid of Alfonso Dennard. So, Skip, how much trouble are the Patriots in at corner?
Stephen A., I would have to say a whole lot of trouble. I'm lost here. I'm baffled. I know that Bill Belichick has a plan. I just, at this moment, can't quite imagine what that plan would be. Because obviously you go from Revis and Browner to, I'm thinking, okay, well, Alfonso Dennard was in the doghouse last year, but he's been a starter before. I'm okay with him. Kyle Arrington had some trouble in the Super Bowl, but he started a lot of games, so I'm okay with him. And obviously Malcolm Butler, the Super Bowl hero from nowhere, maybe he'll emerge and be a star. I don't know.
No Darrelle Revis.
And that's what I'm saying. And then all of a sudden they cut Dennard, and then they cut Kyle Arrington, saying, well, maybe they'll bring him back. And then the Ravens jump in and sign him. And I'm thinking, Okay, wait. Now we're down to Malcolm Butler and Bradley Fletcher, the ex-Eagle, who got so torched by my Cowboys and Des Bryant that it forced you to wear a Tony Romo jersey. That's the guy. That's who's most responsible, Bradley Fletcher, for you wearing a Tony Romo jersey, and now he could be a starter for my New England Patriots. Malcolm Butler and Bradley Fletcher? What is up with that?
That could be a superstar tandem. You never know.
Well, first of all, I didn't know that we were talking about the San Antonio Spurs. I thought it was football instead of basketball because you sound like the same brat that talks about the San Antonio Spurs. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. We understand that they lost Revis, they lost Browner, they lost Wilfrick. We get all of that. Obviously, that's a big loss, and there's reasons to be concerned about their defense. But they still have Belichick, and we've got to believe that somehow, some way, he's going to find a way at least to keep them respectable. From the offensive side of the ball, they're returning practically everybody of significance. When you combine that with the fact that they scored the fourth most points in the NFL at over 29 points a game last year, I definitely think that's something to take into consideration. You still have Edelman, you still have Amendola, you still have Gronkowski, okay, you still have Blunt, you will have Brady, whether it be after 2 games, after 4 games, or all 16 games. We have yet to find out, but they'll be highly motivated. They're returning about 18 starters. So when I look at it from that perspective, Skip, if the only thing of concern I have for the Patriots is the fact that they took a shot at Hartline out of Miami. He signed elsewhere. They took a shot at Reggie Bush. He signed elsewhere. I forgot who else it was. I think Percy Harvin. He ended up going to Buffalo. You had about 13 or 15 top free agent cornerbacks out there available who signed elsewhere. None of them were with New England. So I look at it from that perspective, and I say I'm shocked that people wouldn't gravitate to a world champion who obviously is being led by an exceptional Hall of Fame coach in Bill Belichick. That's cause for concern. But outside of that, in the end, the nucleus of their team, for the most part, remains intact. To win a Super Bowl, maybe not. But to win the AFC East again, get back to the postseason, I don't think there's too much reason for concern in that regard.
Okay, I get it that they could win a lot of games 49-48, but you're omitting the fact that your biggest target on this show last year, Bradley Fletcher, could now be a starter for the New England Patriots defending championship team.
I don't know if he was the biggest target.
He was.
Well,
he was all over
I agree
him.
with that, but it's a difference between playing for Chip Kelly and playing for Bill Belichick.
Well, that's fair, and I hope you're right about that. But I don't know. Maybe there's some ace in the hole we're not seeing.
I'm sure Belichick has something going on. We've got to wrap the show. Stephen A., since you're in Chicago, the game is official tonight, so I'm assuming that we will all watch. Make sure that he's there. Make sure you watch on ESPN. We'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll see you. Have a good afternoon. Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can catch First Take Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on ESPN2.